I am super frustrated right now. I just read this for like went pretty hard and then the audio wasn't working. So here I am again. Oh, okay. But it's funny. I was frustrated enough that I didn't want to do it. It's like- but I thought, yeah, I think it's kind of interesting to go back, especially in a state where I'm like deeply frustrated about this and like not wanting to do it. I'm gonna fix my hair a little bit. The light is wild too right now. It's not a time where I normally do this, but okay. So for this section, we're on page where we're reading cover to cover Parinama method. Like it's like blinded by the light. We're on page 265, techniques and exercises, and in this section, I'm going to read 3 parts. I'm going to read meditation, focus, and concentration, take an all walk, and stillness and silence. And so it'll be a little sped up. It'll be a little speedier because I just did this kind of like really, it felt like it was really good for me. So maybe that's like the message is that that was for me, my contemplation. But the key thing I want to say here is that the whole take on meditation here is a very specific take that is antithetical to this like other notion, this notion that's commonly presented as like another place for like perfection and purity, that meditation would like it's kind of like being like, look, if you're going to work out at the gym or if you're going to ice skate, you need to be like, Nancy Kerrigan, like this like version of meditation that's presented is just so austere and absolutely so out of bounds with like anything that it's like that would be sustainable in terms of a capability entering into any discipline creates a lot of shaming. It's like, I'm not good at it, I don't like it. And I'm gonna reframe this, that meditation in and of itself is any degree to which we are reducing the external stimulation and able to turn inwards and come closer to essentially what I'd almost call like spending time with yourself. And so this is why stillness, so I would say like speed, like that, like things rushing around, a lot of external stimulation, um, and sound, I mean, I guess stimulation and speed. So it's like sounds, sights, things, anything that we're still processing information. It's going through the filters of our reflexes. We're really activating part of our nervous system that just sort of requires taking us into kind of like reflexive unconscious subconscious domain. So it's like the less inputs that we're like putting into our system, the better like the better chance that we have of being able to sort of access like higher levels of like watching, discernment, whatever. um and the other thing is like this idea that it's this like very austere thing, that to meditate means it's like meditation is anything where you're drawing your sensory inputs inward and you're becoming really curious and conscious of the internal phenomenon of you and what comes out of that, like what arises out of that. And so in defense of people that don't like meditating or feel like a natural aversion to it, is that there's this kind of thing that's like, well, if I spend time with myself, and this is central to TPM, which is this internal division that is like there's something about you that it's like you don't want to know. So it's like always trying to talk and crowd it out. And it's like, oh, if I really knew the truth, it's kind of like this other version of, if other people knew the truth about me, then they'd like really be horrified. It's kind of the same thing with yourself. It's like, oh, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. And so this fear of like, if I actually listen to myself, like I'm going to find out that I'm some kind of demonic monster, or the voice, the sort of my integrity is going to be pointing me away from things that provide a lot of safety and comfort for me, a lot of belonging. It's going to point me to expressing things that may alienate me from people. So these are very real things to be um, like a bit sort of apprehensive about. And so, with that being said, that, these are real things. And this is kind of why the bottom-up approach of self-actualization here, with this particular with Parinama, this methodology exists, is that it's the reconciliation. So it's like when you see these things, there's more of a recognition of what they are in terms of being adaptations of, on top of what is our true nature, which are, like we are malleable, we are adaptable. And the thing is we have a lot of like adaptations that where we were adapting when we were smaller and younger. And then that kind of malleability and that fluidity and that ability to shift and adapt and be receptive gets frozen in a moment of time. And then what happens is that moment of time, where we have this adaptation to an environment and we leave the environment, and the adaptation has this thing where it's like magnetically like kind of finding environments where that adaptation works. But the thing is like what you are, the truth of what you are, your integrity, your inherent innocence that is at the core of who and what you are. Like that's what's real. And the thing is, the shedding of the adaptations for reasons previously mentioned is extraordinarily courageous work. This is not like, oh my gosh, their thing to shame people, like, why aren't you doing this? It's a very real thing to be facing, like, you know, expulsion, lack of safety, lack of like accessibility to resources, to speak up to what you feel and believe are true, to break from the status quo. Like this is not something where it's like, hey, you should just meditate. It's like really easy. Or, it's a lack of character in order to, if you can't do it. It's not. It's like this very human. And so, when we're looking at parinama, when we're looking at like understanding what fear is so that we know ourselves, and that meditation is about spending time with ourselves, and like in this way that is like, honestly, it's just, it is kind of extraordinary. It's, like it's that thing where it's like, if people knew who I was, they know what a monster I am. That fear people have is like, oh my gosh, if people really knew. It's directed inward. It's like meditation does. It's like, oh my gosh, if I spend time with myself, I have to live with myself, and I'd see that I'm, monster. So it's like, you have angry thoughts that arise. But if you've done a third hub practice, you know that anger is about repressing your integrity. It's about a sense, and the longer you hold on to it, the more it's like that takeaway that gets pushed into the back of the refrigerator. And when it comes out, it is fucking gnarly the longer it's been in there. And it's like mistaking that for like, that's who I am. That rage, that's me. Oh my gosh, that's the thing I've been trying to hide from myself. It's like, no, that's a reaction that didn't get to actually express itself. And beneath that is the innocence and integrity and authenticity of what you are. But that process of pulling of like releasing that is truly profound. And so back to the thing of like, okay, what are we doing with meditation? And it's like, well, we're spending time with ourselves. And there's definitely an aspect of like this kind of love that happens in that, especially with, and going back into the layers when we're talking about the hubs in terms of like the facets of the nervous system, the facets of this ascension, is to be able to, when we see these things, when we're in a state of drawing our senses inward, that we see things more clearly with the knowledge that it's like, you're not an asshole. You're not a monster. You are a being, like you're extraordinary. There's this like And it's this dissonance in our life that it's like, if it was just true that we're an asshole, we'd just like settle in and call it a day. But it just won't let us go. The sense that that's not true, the sense that that hurts, the entire being like, that hurts. For someone to say bad things about me, for me to say bad things about me, it hurts me. How could that hurt if it's true? How could it hurt you if somebody says bad things? If it's true, if something's true, it's just like, yep. It's a different kind of thing. So I guess this is my entry into talking about this section, which I feel very precious about because of how meditation is commonly like, it's like veganism or any kind of austerity that's considered like, oh, you can't do that kind of thing. Whereas like meditation is anything where, any degree of drawing in your senses. It's like this like sort of inward and creating like concentration in that. And the thing is that it's like that the thing about meditation in this particular sense is that it's like, if you're sitting, like, look, if you're like sitting doing whatever it is that you can, like, where you remain conscious, like you remain aware, because a lot of like how, common way to like spend time with ourselves is to actually like kind of go unconscious, by doing like, and this is the activities themselves don't force unconsciousness. It's actually just the manner in which they're approached. You can actually remain fully conscious while you're watching TV. You can remain relatively fully conscious with like, if you're, smoking weed or, whatever, like, if you like are, it's like a thing you can do. It's doable. It's not, the activities aren't the thing. It's just that the activity kind of can like open up this kind of place to go into oblivion, which also is a thing to do. Do it. I mean, it's not, this is just, there's nothing. So one of the things about this is that this love of yourself is that there isn't this thing where it's like, I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't do that. It's kind of like, what's the accountability you have to take for doing it? Like, what's the cost of it? And it's like, are you willing to pay that? And it's like, I'm not willing to pay that. And so it's like, okay, well, let's like have that discussion with ourselves. Not just this like shaming, shame. It's like, and then, so it's like, wow, okay, let's take this a bit further. So it's kind of like, okay, what's the consequence of doing this that is like bad for me? And it's like, well, I'll have a hangover the next day. So say it's like, I'm going to drink a bottle of wine tonight by myself, like whatever, I don't know. And it's kind of like this thing is like, I shouldn't do that. And then you do it. And then it's like, you wake up and it's like, fuck. And then, so it's like, okay, well, why is that bad? So it's like the shame. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have, like, why? Like, what is the thing? What is the cost of that? What did that cost you? Become clear about it and then say, okay, well, if I'm willing to pay that cost, clearly, this is serving some purpose for me. That's protecting me, that's buffering me, that's comforting me. It's like, what am I being comforted against? So it's like when you do it the next time, you say, this is what I'm doing this for. As long as this notion can stay alive, as long as it's not a refrigerator magnet, it's like, as long as it's like it's the connection to doing the thing is this an act of love in the beginning of this reclamation, of being there for yourself. Doing things for comfort and then shaming that action is literally like, running in place. But do something for comfort and give yourself acceptance for it. I mean, The shame isn't working. I mean, you could be like, "Well, wow, everybody's gonna go like, off the go feral." It's like, they're going feral. Shame doesn't work. If shame works as, like, a short-term thing, the long-term consequence of actually having shamed yourself to achieve some type of, like, result is, like, it's literally like being like, "Well, we get rid of this toxic waste, and we put it in this, when we bury it in this place." It's like, "Well, we got rid of the toxic waste." And then it's like, "Yeah, but, every family, within 10 miles now is experiencing cancer." It's like, "Yeah, but we were getting," it was like this functional thing. It's like, "Yeah, no, it doesn't work. It doesn't work." So I'm gonna read Stillness and Silence. So, consciously reclaiming your human rights and dignity through rest, pleasure, power, connection, expression, and creation reduces agitation and allows for the cultivation of stillness. Constant vigilance of the threats and challenges in life is an ongoing interruption that leads to adaptation and eventually to holding patterns. In peace and silence, we can surrender and access limitless possibilities and transcendence. It's funny, I have, like, a lot less feeling reading this the second time. I'm kinda, like, trying to, like, sort of canter through it. Um, so maybe that's good for anybody who's watching this, like, phew. So visionaries speak of stillness and space as the origination of their creation. In a 1934 New York Times interview, Nikola Tesla said, "Be alone. That is the secret of invention. Be alone. That is when ideas are born." Unfortunately, this vital concept hides in plain sight because it's in dissonance with the commonly held belief that hard work is the singular origin of creation. We tend to see a quietly contemplative student as inferior to one who's furiously banging away on a keyboard. Cultivating the capacity to observe and contemplate allows the mind to open its aperture and capture a greater spectrum of information and pattern recognition. Once you've asked your question, make space for the download, identify time that you can have when you can have uninterrupted space. Set the stopwatch on your phone to 1 minute or more to sit in silence, ask your questions, and then allow for stillness. It's really nice. It's really hard to break that. I want to stay there. Take an awe walk. So, awe expands our focus, extending it into the greater world and allowing us to experience wonder and appreciation for the surroundings that may otherwise feel distant or go unnoticed. Slow down or even stop what you're doing and appreciate things like how nice the air feels on your face or the beauty of everyday nature in your life. If nature is not available, focus on the simple miracle of your physical mobility as you walk. If going outside and walking is not an option, try a meditation. Yeah. So let's talk about meditation. Let's do it. Meditation definitely seems like one of those things, like, let's face it, a book like this, that so in Eastern Body, Western Mind, the kind of the grandmother of this book or the yeah, there's a lot on meditation. And so in true fashion, like this is this iteration that is like really related to practicality. And and I'm gonna be on yeah, I guess one of the things to be really like candid about here is that there are a lot of people that, I've encountered who have this kind of claiming of these like this meditation space, meditation practice, and the qualities they exhibit. um I sometimes I've wondered about this in recent years, which is that without the lower hub practices, the lack of reconciliation, so it's like finding peace in this kind of like an acute period of time without without a framework, without the ability to reconcile some of the arising notions and be able to kind of categorize them, become conscious of them, and transmute them. Like meditation is kind of like a place that you visit, like a vacation, and then you come back to your life, and it's like, isn't this a hellhole? And so, like, so as far as like the consumer product thing, where it's like this selling of this thing where it's like you're just going to be really easy. You're just going to become so accepting. I mean, it's like you really can see where these notions support a status quo, and hence why they're allowed to saturate like popular consciousness, and like they're allowed in, is that it's like you're going to become a lot more agreeable. You're not going to want to look at negative stuff so much. It's like, huh. Wow, these fantastic spiritual practices. It's like, why don't those get banned? Why aren't those considered controversial? Because it's not real. It's like actually more shaming, and it's actually like misdirection, because the thing is that this isn't about like being happy, it's kind of like, flitting around like the joy is this like sustained state, that progress is a sustained state. Like optimism. It's like optimism. You got stop thinking about bad things, because that is like bad. If you think of bad things, that makes, you're just bringing yourself down for no fucking good reason, and any shitty way that your life feels is like definitely your fault because you're bad at thinking. And the thing is that to expand the aperture for love is to expand the aperture for pain, to avoid the aversion of loss. The aversion of loss has to do with like just loving fully. Because the thing that holds us back from loving fully is the imminence of loss. So to be able to like hold in both hands this vulnerability of fallibility, is to be able to love, to be like, I only think of good things. And it's like the pain to see someone else suffer, to care about someone else, to have someone else be vulnerable in the world. Instead of turning that into where love turns into hate, which is like, now I need to protect this thing in this way where I'm like harming others. That creates harm for others. Instead of going deeper into the vulnerability of potential loss and to know that loss is embedded in loving and whatever level of consciousness that you can apply to that is without going primal. All right, let's talk about it. Meditation. Let's read. So, although meditation, semicolon, focus and concentration. So, although meditation has many spiritual implications, it's actually pretty simple. You're training your concentration. This can be as practical or as spiritual as you want it to be. Meditation is a celebration of the prefrontal cortex, the uniquely human ability to choose where we focus and concentrate versus having focus driven by reflex. Oh, that's a good point. Again, the physical practice of yoga is explained in the as explained in the Yoga Sutras, prepares the body to be still. If your body is restless or stiff, it will cause distraction. Likewise, if your thoughts are excessively preoccupied in adaptation and holding patterns and other hubs, they will reflexively steer your focus. The Eightfold Path of Yoga is built sequentially, with the first and second branches as ethical practices, the third branch as the physical practice most often associated with yoga, like asana, just like yoga poses, movements, vinyasa, whatever. The fourth limb is breathing practice, pranayama. And the topmost four branches, the most advanced practices, are introspection, pratyahara, concentration, dharana, drawing awareness inward, dhyana, and transcendence, samadhi, which is the experiential realization that everything is connected. So, introspection, this, like this methodology and this practice contained in this very much could be considered pratyahara. Yeah, could be. So in concentration, what we're talking about is like kind of cleaning the pipe so concentration can become less obstructed. Drawing awareness inward, and this is what we're talking about here with the dhyana. It's like this drawing inward, and this is where stillness and silence and even slowing down is really about making the. It's just, I mean, it's our nervous system. Our nervous system is like kind of the piece of technology that we have, and the fact is, if we keep stimulating it, it's just going to keep processing that stuff, and it's going to stay really activated in its reflexes. So what we're doing is we're trying to give it a fighting chance. And the thing is that, and back to the asana and even pranayama, is that the agitation that arises in this is lower hub stuff. So it's very agitating for people to be still if lower hub reconciliations are still like super unresolved. So it's like, I need to be doing something, or it's like, I feel this, or it's like, oh my God, like there's just, that arising thing where it's like the reflexes of the hub will just keep feeding this thing. It's like, I shouldn't, and so to be able to bring consciousness to is to see it arising and be able to kind of like observe it, to know it, to accept it. And then the transcendence. Transcendence is kind of like a lot of the path. And I remember when I was first, like when my earliest teachers, like the notion of samadhi, like some of my early teachers, their like space was called samadhi. It was the name of their business. I really didn't like the idea of it. I've talked about this before. I was really turned off by it. I was like, I like living in the world. I want to live in the world. I want to like listen to Britney Spears music and buy stupid shit and like have my ding dong fun. I mean, really, like, it's just like, I don't this kind of this idea that it was like you're not alive, like you kind of are leaving the world, but the part of the world that you're leaving is like the shitty part of like having shame. It's like you just do whatever it's like having shame, having like a constriction of your capacity to feel, having chronic fear. That's the release. It's like you get to still be in the world. You're still in the world. If anything, it's like the stuff is like more sort of enjoyable, and the stuff that doesn't like really connect, because some of that stuff is actually connected to adaptations. Some of the tastes for things are sort of adaptation magnetic, but in general, I just look. Here's the thing: is like I'm just saying it's in a really practical way. I want to say like transcendence is like worth the work. I don't say that every day. Today we say that. Okay, so all of yoga orbits around meditation, which can seem kind of boring, especially if you're in the process of resolving imbalance in lower hubs. But none of the upper four branches require. This is four branches of the yoga. Require sitting still or having requirements for what meditation should look like. While sitting for long periods works for some people, any practice of prolonged conscious concentration and focus is meditation. For example, gardening can be a meditation if it involves sustained concentration, focus, and awareness of our body. The underlying cause of much everyday misery is overwhelmed and distracted attention. When we can slow our breath and focus, there's an immediate shift into peace of mind. Training our mental focus is like taking a multivitamin that supports mental and physical health and makes us better at almost everything we do, including work and relationships. But meditation can also be unbearable and can surface anxiety if your lower hubs are highly adapted. So don't be too hard on yourself if you're not ready yet. It's really not important. It really naturally arises from a practice. I mean, like, if you're showing up for your practice, this is like becomes a natural outcropping of it. When the time is right, a concentration practice will be a good fit. If you can start with a few simple moments when you first wake up. The key to forming a lasting habit is to yoke it to something you already do every day, such as sitting for a minute before pouring your coffee. Starting small relieves the pressure around the amount of time required for meditation to count. Yeah, I'll say one of the things, and this is now like over 20 years ago, is one of the things that I found was just taking one deep breath a day. Let's do it right now. So inhale and exhale. It's just to find one little island of peace. To break the unrelenting sense ability or the pattern. Like it kind of it disrupts some of the illusion. Because it's like when you can find even just a break for 5 seconds, it's like there's this comfort in that there is a place you can go. I feel like there's a place you can go. And it's within you. So meditation is not a contest. A single deep breath of gratitude with 5 seconds of meditative focus can shift and soften the intensity of your day. It's probably that, by the way, when I wrote that, I was probably pointing to what I just talked about. I was a drug rep. I worked for a pharmaceutical company. I'd be driving around feeling like, what the fuck am I doing with my life? It's like, I don't know if I've ever told this story, but I found yoga because like I was a compulsively intensive exerciser. And there was this yoga teacher, Roman Spumond, who had seen me at the gym and was like, and had approached me and said, I really think yoga would be really good for you. And I was like, fuck that. Like I had taken Pilates and been like, that was the biggest waste of my time. Like I just like, for me, the thing was, now knowing a bit more about this is that at the time it was really just that I was like that kind of a release of aggression, of just like the exercising and being like, wow. It's like, if I'm not doing that, what good, it's like, this is not going to be serving a purpose. So it's kind of like a waste of time. And for a long period of time, every time he saw me at the gym, he'd like come up to me, and he's just like incredibly, at the time, like very handsome guy, um, really charismatic. And I was just like, oh my God, no. Like, and I'd be on a cardio machine. I remember one time I went into the women's only area and he came in and he's like, listen, I'm telling you, I can tell this would be great for you. And then one day it just happened. It was like a Saturday, like a 12 o'clock class, something like that. And he said, look, we're starting right now. Just come down, do it for free. And I did it, and I didn't miss a class. Every class he ever taught from then on, I attended. And it was just like breakthrough, 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 breakthrough. It was like, okay. Yeah. Yeah. I was looking for it. Like, help me. Okay, let's see. Yeah, just like consciousness, it happens little by little and fits and starts and only requires the devotional discipline of love showing up for yourself. When people confess that they haven't been practicing, I encourage them to explore why without judgment, to seek deeper, non-critical understanding of themselves. Yeah. Yeah, you're just not an asshole. Like, this thing is like, I'm doing something wrong. I'm doing something wrong. It's like, you're not. Like, reevaluate, just look at, like, understand yourself. Like, treat yourself like somebody you love and say like, "Hey, what is it? What, like, let's think about like what you're doing instead and why that is supporting you and what's causing you to need that support." You know? It's like, if it's like, "God, I can't go to yoga. I wanna go, like, have," I don't know why I keep using alcohol examples because 'cause I'm not a huge drinker, but it's a good, I don't know, I feel like it's a good one, which is like, I'd rather, it's like, I'm not gonna go to yoga tonight. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna, have like a bunch of margaritas, and to be like, "Oh my God, I didn't go to yoga. I had a bunch of margaritas." It's like, well, like, why don't you have like, have like an interface with yourself and say like, like, I wanna, it's like, okay, clearly that was like going to do something for me that I needed. This idea that you just need to be disciplined all the time. It's like, if I don't it's like, just show up for yourself. It's like, it's not as cruel. It's like, there is a consistency and a showing up aspect. It's very third hub, but in this very particular way that is like not the indoctrination version, which is like understanding your own motivations and working with them. It's like being like, yeah, like after a day like that at work, I'm trying to just like absolutely like move myself into oblivion. I can't take it. This is too hard. And I have to work this job because, I need to pay my bills, like that kind of thing. It's like, that's creating a lot of stress for me. Or it's like, I need to get, like when I'm in yoga, I'm feeling my feelings too much. It's like opening me up. And honestly, right now, it's like, I don't have the bandwidth to take this on. It's just going to be too disruptive for me right now. And it's like, okay. Just hear yourself, listen to yourself. Don't abandon yourself in these moments. Just say, like, I get it. That's just how it is sometimes. All the time, whenever, like, whatever. You know, there are different ways to meditate, and most involve a single point of focus, walking silently and mindfully, preferably with bare feet in nature. First hub, allowing free flowing, gentle movement of the body. Second hub, following your breath. Fourth hub, repeating an affirmation or mantra. Fifth hub, gazing at an image. Sixth hub, or a flame. Third hub. The seventh hub form of meditation releases focus on an object and surrenders into an all-absorbing presence. Yes, ma'am. Anodea Judith uses the analogy of the illumination of an overhead light instead of a flashlight. Regardless, that's nice. Yeah. Regardless of the style, meditation is choosing your focus, observing it with attention, and firmly and patiently returning your attention when the mind wanders. Yeah, seventh hub meditation is really like, yeah, talk about that some other time. I saw a video the other day, maybe even yesterday, of a woman who's like, yeah, like, this is my meditation, and she's like out smoking some weed in her backyard or outside somewhere. It's like this idea that's like, that's not it. It is this thing where you have with this austerity, which is like things need to be sort of like painful and rigid and restrictive for them to be of merit. There's joy that comes from discipline. There's joy that comes from focus when it's an act of love of showing up for yourself. It's not punishment, when it's not obedience, when it's not internalized obedience, when it's like, this is important to me. Like, this matters for me. This makes me feel good. This is working towards something that really matters to me in this way that I like feel like in a very deep way. There is joy, there is freedom, there is liberation. The idea that in order for you to achieve anything, you need to engage in this like oppositional relationship to this part of yourself that's a piece of shit. I've accomplished a lot of things in my life, and I've used all manner of obedience and pushing and discipline. And I'll tell you, the thing is, the things that have an enduring quality of feeling like they actually, like, over, decades, you look back and it's like, yeah, that's a thing. That's a thing that was like an accomplishment. They're the things that didn't have that quality. All the things where I had to push myself, where I hated it. I look back and I go, oh yeah, that wasn't doing it right. It's like, and the accomplishment is like empty. It's like, it's interesting is that the accomplishment itself is like actually has an emptiness to it. But the love, like the acts of devotion and discipline was like showing up in this connection of getting into a better relationship with myself, of like creating things for myself in the spirit of supporting people and things I care about that matter to me. Those things have this enduring quality that I can still connect to. And they were hard. Made a lot of sacrifices. So this idea that it's like, oh my God, that you're just going to become soft and you're going to become an asshole, maybe for a little while. But if we don't have this like what we're returning back to with parinama is to the loving relationship with ourselves, to trust with ourselves, to trust, to cherishing ourselves, to this lack of division, this internalized, discipline and obedience that's like using shame. And for some of us, it's what we're taught. It's the only tools we have for like achievement. So that's those are the tools we have for achievement. So we just like we use them because we want to achieve things. But as we achieve them in the sort of in the tangle, like they just they're tightening this noose on us that's creating this sense that life sucks. And life doesn't suck. Life doesn't suck. And I say this in the face of things in the world being terrible. That life itself does not suck. There are terrible things, but the more that we embody shame and authoritarianism and discipline and shame and like chronic shame, chronic fear, you know, like distrust in ourselves, like the more that we're actually housing these qualities within ourselves of the terrible things in the world. So, right. That's it for today. Yeah. Okay. Well, I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. And you might have to trust that there's something that I understand, I understand about your deservingness, your inherent worthiness, your inherent lovability. I used to not be able to look at myself in the mirror, like in the eye. I used to have this thing like aversion. Look away, look away, look away. And the thing that changes is it's like seeing myself and like looking into my eyes and just being like, woo. That's what's real. That's what's real. It's in there. It's in there. And the masks, in the Sarah Marshall, the podcaster, was talking about the, sort of the cinematic notion that, is kind of continuously communicated in movies, which is like at the sort of like the moment of, before, like you like one dies, or that there's this kind of like moment of revelation where love is possible, where the adaptations are shed, like the Darth Vader mask is lifted and he can look, finally see and say, I love you. The adaptations can be shed. And this is the thing where it's like, and her point was like, I think she's talking about the passing of her father. She said, I realized like that's like actually like like sort of a plot device or whatever, or like I don't know what the right term is for it, but that she goes, yeah, that's not what happened for me. And she's like, I realized that people can wear that mask like straight to the grave. And this is, back to the thing with Bronnie Ware, the hospice nurse who wrote the top 5 regrets of the dying, that it was like the thing that people care, like the thing that the top regret isn't like love or this or that. I mean, that's in there, but the top regret is I wish I'd been more myself. I wish I'd allowed myself to be more myself. I wish I'd allowed myself to be more myself. And also those studies that were, where they were measuring at MIT, and It's been replicated in, I think, like Germany or whatever, where they're measuring the frequency of emotions, and the strongest frequency, whatever that means, is, people are like, "Oh, it's love, isn't it?" It's like, no, it's integrity. So it's like, connect these dots, man. These adaptations that we're talking about, they're really, there's a profound consequence for not addressing them, and the longer they're left, the stronger they become. The more calcified, the more dried out, the harder, like, they do not become like, yeah, no, I'm just gonna say, it's like the time is now. Just give yourself that one breath. Give yourself that one breath. Give yourself that one, just like one opening. One little opening to see the truth about yourself, the freedom that exists within you, the profound, extraordinary divinity that exists within you, and fall in love with it. Okay, ding. Okay, I do. I love you. And I'll see you next time. Bye for now.